Hi there, welcome to this week's Inside Track with Scottish Sun. I've got Jim Delahunt here again with me. Happy New Year, Jim.
Happy New Year, Robert. Hope it was a good one.
Yeah, good, good. Some great racing, which we're going to focus on at the moment. But first of all, a couple of hours after we recorded last week's episode, we had Ballyburn over at Kempton against Sir Gino. Did we see a superstar there? Everybody seems to think we did. The ratings seem to suggest he's up there with your Sprinter Sacras, your Altiors, and everything. How did you feel about the race?
Yeah, we had a bit of a debate last week, didn't we, Robert, about whether Constitution Hill was as brilliant as everybody seemed to think he was. But I think there's no debate this time. So Gino was absolutely outstanding. He was a little bit hesitant, maybe the first and the third fence, but after that, there was absolutely no problem. And rarely do you see Nico de Boinville so confident. I just thought the horse looked an absolutely outstanding prospect. We always knew he was a good horse. And it also throws us back to that infamous gallop, Robert, doesn't it? Because the gallop between Sir Gino and Constitution Hill, the chances are now that Sir Gino just ran all over Constitution Hill, and that's how good he is. And that's how good Constitution Hill is. So going forward, I checked the Arkle just before we come on, and he's 5 to 6 favourite, best price for the Arkle. You're looking at the Majborough, the Willie Mullins horse at 7 to 2 tops. And hopefully we might see that horse at Naas on Sunday, weather permitting and declarations permitting. We might have a wee look at that one just to see how he compares. But Sir Gino, at 5 to 6 at the moment, Robert, if you could guarantee me that horse would turn up, I would put a few quid on that.
And then what happens with Ballyburn now? Obviously, there's not the 2.5 mile Grade One novice chase anymore. That's now a handicap. He'll be forced into the Brown Advisory. Do you see the step up and trip being the making of him?
I do actually, yes. I think Ballyburn, once he's allowed to relax a bit more, go at his own pace, he'll show his true colours. And again, I noticed this morning, 4 to 1 top price for the Brown Advisory Ballyburn. That seems to me about right. I wouldn't put anybody off taking that because I'm fairly certain that's where he'll end up. The Jukebox Man, though, 6 to 1, second favourite. I know that horse has a lot of fans. Harry Redknapp's horse, and it's done very little wrong so far. But Ballyburn at 4 to 1 for the Brown Advisory. That seems about right to me at the moment, Robert.
And then Saturday was the Charlo was the big race at Newbury, where the new Lion came out and just ran right all
Oh,
over the top of him. I mean, Regent Stroll went off favourite. You could tell by Paul Nicholls' reaction how deflated he was that they realised the bubbles well and truly burst there. I mean, I think he's now favourite for his race at Cheltenham. Justified with that, and I mean, how good was that performance?
that was a very good performance. I mean, 3 to 1 favourite for the Turners. That's probably about right again. Darren Yates, the owner, I think he was getting carried away and suggesting the champion hurdle. Dan Skelton soon put him in his place about that one. But the confidence exuding from Harry Skelton all the way up the straight. You know, the old pulling the goggles down trick and giving them a wee wipe and having a wee look to the left and a wee look to the right. The only thing that surprised me was that he didn't do the aeroplane that he does when he crosses the line sometimes, because that horse really is an aeroplane, and I don't see that horse being beaten at Cheltenham. 3 to 1 could look very good on the day. I don't think that'll last, Robert. We'll see how the Irish Challenge mounts up over the next couple of weeks. But my goodness, the new Lion, he looks a real class act.
For me, it was the way he took a pull and just went, all right, I'll just nick in behind you then and we'll go to the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
side. I mean, he was oozing confidence, wasn't he?
Yeah, when they do that, you wonder, is he making a mistake here? Does he really have the horse underneath him that he thinks he's got? But oh my goodness, he really did. And he won as he liked, and it really was. I mean, as you know, Robert, I'm very big on visuals, and visually that was hugely impressive. We can worry about the figures later, but that was a hugely impressive performance, and that looks a very good prospect for Cheltenham in terms of the British side. Again, I'll repeat, I don't know how good the Irish are going to be. We'll see that over the next few weeks, but from the British side, the new Lion looks a real prospect.
Well, I mean, the Irish definitely have the favourite for the Gold Cup now after galloping Deschamps and
Oh,
the Sables. We talked about it last week, suggested that back to Leopardstown, back to 3 miles, exactly what he wants. I mean, he looks rock solid for a third Gold Cup now, doesn't he?
it really does. You're struggling to find anything to put up against him. That was an immense performance at Leopardstown. I mean, we know he likes Leopardstown. We know that he likes Cheltenham. So when you can operate around those two tracks, you've got it made, haven't you? And they used to go to Tremor on New Year's Day. Well, that's out the window now. They know he's a big time horse, and he again, Paul Townend. I thought he gave him a really brave man's ride. He stuck him out the front, and he knew he had everything covered. He quickened again when it mattered, and 64 favourite for the Gold Cup. And I know you flagged it up a couple of weeks ago at 7 to 2, Robert.
Well, I actually went 9-2. I mean, I couldn't believe Sky Bet went 9-2. Anybody that can still get on with Sky Bet, of course. But they went 9-2. It was a huge overreaction. 7-2, which he was generally available at, a huge overreaction. I don't think you'll see 7-2 again
No,
before the Friday in March. But I thought it was a huge performance, and you don't see what beats him now, do you? I mean,
you
fact,
really don't.
well,
And I should mention we flagged up the big Grade One double last week. I said that Gallop and Deschamps and Home by the Lee got the first leg up very impressively indeed. I did manage to get a 3-1 single with a super boost with one of the firms about Home by the Lee, but I did the double. It paid just over 4-1, and if you'd taken the early prices, it would have paid just over 6-1 as well. So yeah, delighted with that. Delighted with Home by the Lee. He now goes for the Stairs Hurdle. Obviously, I'm not sure if he runs between now and Cheltenham, but 10-1 for the Stairs Home by the Lee. Joseph O'Brien's big race record, you couldn't roll that out, could you?
no, you certainly couldn't. And I mean, the other race, the Champion Hurdle, is now just a fascinating contest with Constitution Hill coming back. State Man's now been beaten twice by Brighter Days Ahead. I mean,
Yeah,
that was a freakish performance. I thought the Elliott Camp played it very well, just giving her a tone to the race and then letting
yeah,
her go off the bend. I mean, I know people are saying the Mullins horses have been underperforming. I don't think even State Man on a going day gets close to that the way she ran. I mean, O'Leary, is he at it with we might go to the Mayor's Hurdle still? I mean, you know he likes the
yeah.
publicity, he likes throwing a few grenades in here and there. Surely she's got to go to the Champion Hurdle.
Surely to goodness it's got to go for the Champion Hurdle. It's one I don't like sitting on the fence at all, Robert, but this is one I am going to sit on the fence because Brighter Days Ahead, you know she's good purely on the visual evidence. I'm just not sure she's brilliant, and I'd just like to be convinced. I do, though, agree with you. I think she has to go for the Champion Hurdle. None of this ducking and diving and going for the Mayor's Race. Maybe Michael O'Leary's just at it again, as you suggest. We'll see in the next few weeks. But Gordon Elliott, I'm sure if he's got a Champion Hurdle in his stable, he wants to go for the big one.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And do you just sense with Constitution Hill coming back, we still don't know exactly what that performance was. Well, it was
Yeah,
interesting. A few paddock watchers said that he was a bit fat at,
yeah, yeah.
before the Christmas hurdle. I thought that was interesting. So you would expect to be a bit of improvement there with Sir Gino's emergence, the new line. Do you just feel the tides maybe turning a wee bit back in favour of the UK horses for March?
You'd like to think so, but come the week before Cheltenham, and you start getting the 6 day declarations and all the rest of it, and then you suddenly realise how strong a hand the Irish have. And again, I was going through all the anti-post prices for all 4 days this morning, just before we come on here, Robert. And you still look at those prices and you see how dominant the Irish stables are. Yes, we've got a few, and we could end up with 6 or 8 winners, but it does look that coming towards the festival itself, I think you'll find that the Irish are as strong as ever.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And the Double Racing Festival tells you as well that we've still got
Yeah,
that to go, and markets will be shaking up after that. So, I mean, I just think that the Irish are so strong in terms of the battalions that they've got, and they all know where they are with them, whereas we're throwing eggs at a wall kind of thing. But I have
yeah.
to say, I think the three that we've mentioned are rock solid. I mean, the new Lion, I think, is a proper horse. But
Yeah,
we'll
so
move on.
Gino and the new Lion, they look good, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, those two certainly. Constitution Hill, if he improves and comes back to what he was, nothing will beat him. But
Exactly.
there's a few ifs and buts here. I'd like to see him again before Cheltenham, but we don't know whether we will. Was there anything else over the festive season? I mean, maybe some of the lower grade stuff that caught your eye?
No, obviously, I know you were down at Ayr on the 2nd of January, just the other day, and I was presenting there as well. And I did think the whistle stop tour for Lucinda Russell and Derek Fox looked a real handicap prospect going forward. We've seen this horse before. He was a bit disappointing at Ayr first time, but he then won next time out. And he did the business, I thought, from £6 higher at Ayr during the week. There's now going to be a choice of targets for him. He'll either go for a long distance race at the Cheltenham Festival, or he'll wait for the Saturday at Utopster. I think that's Midlands Grand National Day. There's a novices handicap chase there. And I think long term, they think, Robert, this is a Grand National horse. Derek Fox has got them very excited by suggesting that he's very similar to One for Arthur, which of course won the entry Grand National, but maybe a Scottish Grand National hope shorter term. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Scott. Well, certainly the way he ran around there yesterday, Scottish National should hold no fears for him. I mean, he looks rapidly in the upgrade. twice he's won on soft ground now. I've got a wee feeling he might be better on better
Yeah,
ground.
I agree with that.
I know when the owners bought him, he won his point to point on bottomless ground, and they thought, oh, he needs a bog, but I'm not sure he does. And I think once you get into the spring, I think you might see a bit more improvement in him yet. And he'll probably go up to a mark of 136. So you're starting to look at better class of races and stepping him up and up the levels now. So he's definitely an exciting one for them going forward.
Yeah, really, I have to agree with that. And Lucinda Russell's horses are in terrific form. She had a double at Ayr and also an across the card treble. She had a winner on the flat at Newcastle as well yesterday, which is tremendous. Just shows how well these horses are going forward. I noticed when I chatted to Peter Scudamore in the winners' enclosure after one of their successes yesterday, he was just exuding confidence about one or two of his horses going forward. So keep an eye on the Russell string going forward. And just before we move back to the jumping, keep an eye on Jim Goldie's string because they're starting to kick on the all-weather. He's had two or three winners over the last few days. Champion flat trainer in the summer in Scotland. He just missed out and get to £1 million last year. He won't be far away this year if the horses keep going as well as they do. And he's just starting to kick in on the all-weather, and there's a few firing in.
Good stuff. Well, we'll move on to this weekend where we're going to have to beat the weather. I mean, Sandown are hopeful their card will go ahead, although there's slight concern about the dreaded fog that we saw over Christmas and New Year make a reappearance there. Newcastle's down to -3 overnight. There's not an inspection there at the moment. Wincanton's going to be frosty, and there's a 7:30 in the morning inspection at Naas on Sunday. So the weather's going to play a big part this weekend. But Jim, if we start off at Sandown, where the main event is the Veterans Chase. Obviously, they all had their birthday a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Who's going to have a happy birthday?
Well, it's an interesting one because there's a few in this that were very classy chasers in their day and might still retain a fair chunk of ability. And one of those would have to be the very top one, Anthony Honeyball's horse, which is 13 now, Sam Brown. I still think on its day this is a decent horse, and his handicap mark reflects that. He'll carry top weight of 12 stone with a very useful claimer taking off £10. So keep an eye on Sam Brown. But further down the handicap, I think, are two that we have to be interested in. One is the Scottish challenger, Sandy Thompson's Empire Steel. I spoke to Sandy at Ayr on Thursday, and his horses are running well at the moment without absolutely firing 100%. Let's be honest and say that. But good luck to Empire Steel. I think it's got a great chance. And of course, Sandy, as you well know, has won that race before, that £100,000 race down at Sandown, the Veterans Chase. The 10-year-olds which qualified last year have all now turned 11. That's why you've got no 10-year-olds in the final. And one of those 10-year-olds which qualified just last year and is now 11, right down at the bottom of the weights, is Smarty Wild. Very, very smart chaser for Philip Hobbs back in the day. He's had 2 years off the track. He came back in the qualifier just to get himself ready for this. He's now much lower in the handicap than he was in his heyday. He hasn't had a lot of racing because of that 2-year break. Ben Jones is on. I think that's an interesting jockey booking because he only carries 10 stone 2. Philip Hobbs now a joint trainer with Johnson White. The horses are absolutely flying, winning right, left and centre, all trips, all grounds. And I think Smarty Wild might have sneaked in here right down at the bottom of the handicap. I think he's about £10 lower than he was in his heyday. And I think the handicapper might have dropped him too quick because this horse will be fit this time. Certainly wasn't fit in the qualifier. And I think Smarty Wild, if he showed a semblance of his top form from just a couple of years ago, he'll go very close indeed. I've had a little each way bet at 16s. I suspect he'll go off about 10s. That could still be each way value, Robert, but I know you fancy Sandy's horse.
Yeah, I do. I would just go back to his form at Kelso when he gave Nell's son £8 and a beating. That form to me looks pretty good.
Very good.
Nell's son came out and beat Matata and whatnot the last time at Kelso. Also, 6 of the last 8 winners of this race. I think there have only been 8 runners of the race. 6 of the last 8 have carried 11 stone 3 or less. And that's exactly where he is. Back off 142, his last winning mark. And as you said, Sandy's target the race before we see you at midnight and pulled off a touch there. He went off a huge price that day. I think he started 31 in the morning, won at 25s or something. Was a crazy bet considering what he'd achieved over his career. Ryan Manny is a jockey I really like. He'll ride him prominently from the front, and I think he's got to have a right chance for Sandy this time.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point, and you might find that I've got a saver on that as well. But Smarty Wild is my each way tip, and Empire Steel for the saver. I know you fancy that, so let's stick with the two of them. I think it is worth mentioning. You mentioned the price there of See You at Midnight a few years ago. I think other than Lucinda Russell, when the Southern punters see a horse coming down from Chile Jocko Land, that they let it go off at a decent price. So I think each way Empire Steel, we won't be too far away, Robert.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can hit the frame with that. Is there anything else on this card that you fancy?
Yeah, but bearing in mind what you said about Newcastle and Wincanton, which would have to be doubt, so we'll just mention a couple there later, but probably worth a mention for a horse called Fine Casting. I've already said that Ben Jones is riding so well, and he rides Smarty Wild for the Hobbs team in the big one. But Fine Casting, I thought, a 9-year-old now, but has a very little racing, would have a right chance in the handicap hurdle at 115. And also in the 150, I've been very, very impressed with Rocco Vango. I think he's a horse on the upgrade. I love the way Sean Bowen rides this horse, and I think I'll be looking for a price about him. I think I saw 72 last night. I might have to have another look later on, Robert. But Rocco Vango in the 150 and Fine Casting in the 115 were the two that I'd be looking at. And I think you might have another one there.
Newcastle.
Newcastle, yes.
Yeah, well, we got to Newcastle. First of all, I mean, we talked about Wise Eagle last week.
Yeah,
He didn't go at Musselwell like we thought. He goes to Newcastle. I'm not sure he'll be a bet for me at the price he's likely to go off, but we want to certainly keep an eye on for bigger days ahead. The other matchup we've got is Derry Hassan Paddy, who we talked about last week as well. Didn't go to his engagement he was entered for. Runs against Smoking in the Dark, which beat another horse called Jet to
yeah,
Vegas in the same ownership and same trainer at Musselburgh a few weeks ago. So that'll be an interesting one. I mean, we've both said that we think Derry Hassan Paddy could be a proper
very
novice
much so.
this year. So be interesting to see those two. But I've got one at 308 which caught my eye called Maxi Boy de Grostis for Richard Hobson, who's a trainer I quite like when he sends his horses north. He's got a 26% strike rate in Newcastle. He's a half brother to Itchy Feet, who won some nice races for Ollie Murphy. He's had 3 runs for a handicap mark, the old favourite where you go out in front one time, you're out the back the next time, the second time you're or the third time you're hunted in the middle of the pack. He showed loads of promise at Doncaster last time when he was third behind Off the Jury, the infamous Off the Jury, who David Maxwell's managed to get beat twice at massive odds-on prices at Doncaster. I just thought he ran a wee bit green, but he finished his race well, and I think, I mean, I've no idea what kind of price he'll be. His handicap debut, so I mean, you might get a lovely early price
Yeah.
or overnight or whatever if you're able to get on these. But I just thought Maxi Boy de Grosses in the 308 was worth a second look.
Yeah, I would go along with that. I had a look at the form once you mentioned it to me in an email yesterday, and it's good that you've got Brian Hughes on board as well. He got his 50th winner up for the season at Ayr on Thursday, riding as well as ever, grumpy as ever, I have to say, but riding as well as ever. But well done, Brian, on that, and I hope he can get Maxi Boy de Grossis at least into the frame, Robert, once we check the prices for that one.
Yeah. And then if we go down to Wincanton, we've both got one in the same race again at Wincanton, just sod's law that when we did the cards each, we come up with one in the same race. So you like Cadway de Jouet in the
Yeah,
315, Jim?
yeah, the form ties in with Fine Casting, the one I mentioned for the 115 at Sandown. He won the race that Fine Casting was second in last time. I think this is a very progressive young horse for Nicky Henderson. James Bowen in the saddle this time. Probably lives in the shadow of his brother a bit, but he's a very, very capable jockey indeed. Number 2 to Nico de Boinville at Seven Barrows. I think James Bowen can get Cadu de Joy home for the hat trick. But the one I'm worried about is the one that you fancy, the top weight, ninth loch with Vicky Malzard in the saddle.
Yeah, well, this one just strikes me it could be anything. I mean, it used to be with Willie Mullins and was narrowly beaten by the Wallpark, who's went rapidly up the handicap ratings and ran the Grade One the last time. Has been bought by JP McManus. After that, he was moved to France with Noel George, who's another smart operator. Won 3 races in France over 2 mile two. Mark of 122 for this race.
Yeah,
Now, that just give you a guess. We don't know. I mean, we talked about this, how difficult it is to evaluate the French form against the UK form. In
very much.
terms of Jet Blue a few weeks ago, who, although that wasn't a handicap he ran in, was rated £4 lower than Skyjack Hijack and ended up beating him 20 lengths. So that shows how difficult it is to get a handle on these French horses. The Harry Durham stable who have had a bit of a disaster with their gallops recently, and he put that out the other day that he had to get a new gallop after it was washed away. They're back in flying form.
Yeah.
December the 29th, his form is 2-1-1, 2-1-3 with his runners. And Vicky Malzard, there's in 3 winners for 11 runners for him. So that was just one that caught my eye. Again, one that probably watching the betting and see what happens.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if that runs a big race in his debut for Harry Denham.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. If Wincanton's on, we can only keep our fingers crossed, Robert. We're fingers crossed again. I think there's an inspection at Naas on Sunday. I've already mentioned that we might see Majborough there, but of course we've got a Grade 1 novices hurdle over 2.5 miles as well. Again, that field will pan out as the weekend progresses. If Butch Cassidy ran, I'd be very interested if it's an each way price. That's another one for Henry de Bromhead. I've been very keen on his horses recently. So I've got an eye on Butch Cassidy if it runs and if it's a decent price, worth a place. And so fingers crossed for Naas on Sunday. But just a wee mention before we finish, Robert, the Friday nap in the Scottish Sun is an evening race. It's in 7 o'clock at Southwell tonight, and it's Bernie the Bear for Linda Perrott. And I think it's weighted to win a very bad race. That is all I will say about that.
That's great, Jim. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Robert.
Cheers. Good luck with your bets, folks.
Cheers now.